The pre-war electric pioneers, 1930s to 1940s, ES-150. Released in 1936, this instrument stands as arguably the first commercially successful electric guitar. It was originally designed as a fully hollow acoustic archtop, but what made it truly special was the addition of a massive bar pickup. Jazz pioneer Charlie Christian became the most prominent adopter of this guitar, proving that the electric guitar had a legitimate, powerful place in modern ensembles, while other early greats like Eddie Durham also relied on it to cut through large big band arrangements. ES-250 and ES-300. Following the success of their first electric model, Gibson introduced the upgraded 250 in 1939, giving it fancier inlays and a more refined aesthetic. Just a year later, the massive 300 hit the market, featuring an enormous diagonal pickup stretching almost entirely across the guitar's body. The 250 became another staple for Charlie Christian before his untimely death, while early blues pioneer T-Bone Walker adopted these larger archtops to lay the groundwork for modern electric blues. ES-175 and ES-5. Hitting the market in 1949, the 175 quickly became the absolute gold standard for hollow-body jazz guitars. It was notable for being the first Gibson electric to feature a sharp Florentine-style cutaway, which allowed players much easier access to the upper frets. That same year, the 5 was launched to serve as the electric equivalent of the premium acoustic L5, standing out with its impressive array of 3P90 pickups. Over the years, the 175 became practically synonymous with jazz virtuosos like Joe Pass and Pat Metheny, while progressive rock guitarist Steve Howe used it to heavily shape the signature sound of Yes. The solid body and archtop golden age, 1950s Les Paul. Introduced in 1952, this model marked the brand's first foray into solid-body electric guitars and established their signature thick, single cutaway aesthetic. As its popularity grew, the line fractured into several distinct tiers to capture different markets, ranging from the elegant custom down to the student-focused junior. Over the decades, it has become the foundational weapon of choice for countless rock legends, most notably Jimmy Page, Slash, Duane Allman, and Gary Moore. Byrdland. Hitting shelves in 1955, this guitar maintained a fully hollow body but was built with a much thinner depth than traditional archtops and utilized a uniquely short 23.5-inch scale length. These specific design choices were tailored explicitly for jazz musicians who needed an instrument capable of handling rapid, complex chord changes. While it was built for jazz players like its namesake Hank Garland, it found an unexpected home with wild rock musician Ted Nugent, who used its hollow body to create incredibly loud, controlled feedback on stage. The semi-hollow and modernistic revolution, 1958 to 1959, ES 335, 345, and 355. In 1958, a massive breakthrough occurred with the creation of the world's first semi-hollow electric guitar. By placing a solid maple block down the center of the 335, designers successfully eliminated feedback issues at high volumes while retaining the resonant warmth of an acoustic instrument. The 345 added stereo output, and the flagship 355 introduced an ebony fretboard and Bigsby vibrato. Aside from B.B. King's legendary association with the 355, the 335 became the foundational sound for rock and roll pioneer Chuck Berry and guitar virtuoso Eric Clapton during his time in Cream. Explorer, Flying V, and Modern. Also arriving in 1958, this modernistic line of solid body guitars was a deliberate attempt to shed a somewhat traditional, conservative image. The angular Explorer, the perfectly symmetrical Flying V, and the mythically rare Modern were completely radical for their time. While they were commercial flops upon their initial release, the Flying V was championed by blues titan Albert King, before both the V and Explorer were heavily adopted decades later by metal icons like Metallica's James Hetfield and Kirk Hammett. ES330 and Melody Maker. Arriving in 1959, the 330 looked almost identical to the semi-hollow 335, but it was actually completely hollow inside and came equipped with P90 pickups. At the same time, the budget-friendly Melody Maker was introduced to capture the student market as an ultra-thin slab mahogany guitar. The 330 found a dedicated audience among jazz and funk players like Grant Green, while the incredibly simple Melody Maker later became an iconic punk rock machine in the hands of Joan Jett. The SG and Radical Shapes, 1960s, SG. Facing declining sales in 1961, the company completely redesigned their flagship solid body into a thinner, double cutaway shape with sharp, aggressive bevels. The namesake artist of the original Les Paul completely disliked the new design, leading the company to quickly rename it to simply stand for solid guitar. Despite the initial rejection, the model went on to define heavy rock and metal, becoming the lifelong signature instrument for AC/DC's Angus Young, Black Sabbath's Tony Iommi, and modern slide master Derek Trucks. Firebird. Debuting in 1963, this model was notably designed by a prominent automotive designer rather than a traditional luthier. It featured a bold, asymmetrical shape, strong neck-through-body construction, and specialized mini humbuckers that gave it a bright, cutting tone. This fierce sound and unique look perfectly suited high-energy electric blues, making it the signature instrument of Texas legend Johnny Winter and a heavy favorite of Lynyrd Skynyrd's Allen Collins. The lawsuit-era oddities, 1970s, Marauder and S1. During the 1970s, there was a concerted effort to win over players who preferred Fender instruments. The 1974 Marauder featured a bolt-on neck and bright pickups encased in clear epoxy, while the 1975 S1 utilized the exact same body shape but added 3 single-coil pickups. While they ultimately struggled to capture their intended audience, the Marauder did gain some notoriety thanks to Kiss frontman Paul Stanley, who routinely destroyed several of them on stage at the end of concerts, and the S1 saw brief use by the Rolling Stones' Ron Wood. RD and the Paul. Launched in 1977, the RD line featured an elongated version of the Explorer body shape and included active electronics designed by synthesizer pioneer Robert Moog to offer built-in compression and expansion. A year later, a budget model called the Paul was released, offering a classic single cutaway shape built entirely out of solid walnut. The RD eventually found a modern cult following among heavier alternative bands, with Foo Fighters frontman Dave Grohl playing a custom model, while the Paul became a reliable, cheap workhorse for late 70s punk bands. The Superstrat Panic, 1980s. Sonex. Introduced in 1980, this was an extreme budget guitar born out of an era of manufacturing cost-cutting. Instead of traditional tone woods, it was constructed from a material called resin wood, consisting of a synthetic core tightly wrapped in a durable, hard plastic outer shell. Because of its cheap construction and heavy weight, it rarely attracted high-profile rock stars, instead finding a second life decades later in the hands of noisy, underground indie rock musicians who valued its absolute indestructibility over prestige. Corvus. Released in 1982, this instrument was intentionally designed to look like a bird in flight when viewed from a certain angle. However, the asymmetrical body shape did not resonate with players at all and was heavily mocked by the guitar community for closely resembling a standard household can opener. Because of its highly controversial look, it completely failed to attract any major popular players, mostly remaining an obscure oddity collected by die-hard vintage enthusiasts rather than working musicians. Challenger and Spirit. The 1983 Challenger was a rather basic bolt-on single cutaway instrument built primarily as a pragmatic way to clear out a surplus of unused Marauder bodies from the factory. That same year, the Spirit was introduced as a double cutaway model that heavily borrowed its design language from the Epiphone Crestwood. Much like other budget models of the decade, these rarely made it into the hands of arena rock stars, but were instead picked up by emerging garage rock artists who needed affordable, reliable, American-made gigging instruments. Modern experiments and refinements, 1990s to present. Nighthawk and Blueshawk. Introduced in 1993, the Nighthawk attempted to blend a familiar single cutaway body shape with competitor-style appointments, adopting a longer 25.5-inch scale length for higher string tension. In 1996, it was joined by the Blueshawk, a semi-hollow sibling that utilized clever dummy coils to significantly reduce single-coil hum. The Nighthawk found a notable fan in Heart's Nancy Wilson, who appreciated its tonal versatility, while U2's The Edge occasionally used the Blueshawk for its unique blend of bite and semi-hollow warmth. Robot Guitar. Hitting the market in 2007, this instrument attempted to revolutionize live gigging by incorporating an automated, motorized tuning system into a standard single cutaway body. While the technology allowed for instant alternate tunings at the push of a button, it was largely rejected by traditionalists. Because of the heavy skepticism from the guitar community, it was rarely seen in the hands of popular artists, as most touring professionals preferred to hand their standard guitars to a trusted tech rather than rely on internal robotics. ES339. Also introduced in 2007, this model offered a highly practical refinement of a classic design. It took the exact semi-hollow construction and tonal characteristics of the legendary 335, but shrank the massive body down to proportions much closer to a standard solid-body electric. Its comfortable size and classic tone quickly made it a modern favorite, regularly appearing in the hands of versatile players like Noel Gallagher and session ace Lee Ritenour, who wanted classic semi-hollow tones without the cumbersome bulk.